satisfaction is very, very important, and their engagement is very important to ensure the achievement of the learning outcomes of these organizations. And during the pandemic, we all have witnessed this paradigm shift in the education and training from a supply-driven teaching to a demand-led learning. It has completely changed. And now, to measure the efficiency and the effectiveness of educational organizations, the adoption of a standard, a global best practice, it has to become a widespread norm. And probably this is going to be the only way to achieve this. Standards are a vehicle for sharing knowledge, for sharing technology, and for sharing good practices. I am here referring to the international standard called ISO 21001, which is the Management Systems for Educational Organizations. It was developed by the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and the standard got published in May 2018. And since then, a large number of the learning and development organizations, schools, colleges, universities, coaching, mentoring organizations, they have been implementing this standard. And as an accredited body, COE has been nurturing their management systems through the value-added conformity assessments. And these organizations, they've contributed immensely to the implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially if I talk about goal number 4, goal number 10, and goal number 11. Quality education, sustainable cities and communities, and reducing inequalities. In the current environment, I think implementing the standard in the educational organization is going to be the most logical step, because we all want to gain a competitive advantage. All the educational organizations want to gain that. In fact, for India, I would say it has become more relevant than ever, because our new education policy, NEP 2020, has adequately emphasized the need to ensure standardization in schools as well as higher education. Now, today in this webinar, we would discuss on various topics. We have got some eminent speakers with us who are accomplished professionals, and with their experience, their knowledge, they are going to share a lot of insights. And these topics that have been chosen for today's discussion, they are very relevant and very crucial to our understanding of the key concepts for strengthening the educational management system. So how one can do that. So we are going to understand those concepts today in this 1 hour and a half event that we have. Standards, conformity assessments, certifications, accreditations, these are not new in the industry. In fact, they have always been a significant part of the industry world over. Whereas in the education sector, now I think it's high time that we all embrace it as an improvement tool. And we also try and contribute to the economic development of our respective countries through standards. Why I'm saying the economic growth is because there was a research that was published by ISO very recently, about 3 months back, on I think 24th of Feb 2021. It's available on ISO website also. This study was conducted in the Nordic countries and UK. The study proved that standards were responsible for 28% of the rise in GDP. And there was another study that was conducted in France. All the organizations, of course, including some small and medium enterprises also, all the organizations who were surveyed, the study proved that over 66% of the organizations have said that they have been able to increase their profits because of standardization. There are 69% of these companies who have said that the standards have a positive impact on their businesses. So we have a lot of such studies and a lot of proven facts to establish the significance of global standards. This standard that today we are talking about, the EOMS standard, helps the educational organization in various ways. It helps you align your vision, your strategies, your goals. It enhances the stakeholder satisfaction. It would help you in managing your risks and opportunities better. And it would also ensure the achievement of your learning outcomes. And of course, in the journey, it would lead to an improvement in your credibility. I can go on this standard. It has been a field of my passion, and for the last almost since 2018, in fact, before that, I have been working particularly on this standard. And why we chose this day for the discussion on the standards, conformity assessments, and accreditation is because today, 9th June, the whole world is celebrating World Accreditation Day. And as an accredited body, COE is trying to make an effort through this webinar to enhance the understanding of the educational leaders about standardization in the education sector. How the standards play an important role, this is what we are going to talk about, how the global governance can be improved through this. I just got to know that in this webinar today, other than India, we've been joined by participants from Europe, US, UAE, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and Australia. A very warm welcome to all of you. We are very happy that you've joined us. Now, without spending much time in the initial introductions, let us begin today's interactions. And let me take this opportunity to invite our first speaker, a very eminent personality, a very seasoned professional, Dr. Abhay Sinha. Dr. Abhay Sinha is the Director General of the Service Export Promotion Council. Dr. Abhay has more than 22 years of experience in various organizations under Ministry of Commerce, Industry, CII, and his core strengths have been in the international trade regulations, policy, strategy, market research, and information services. So Dr. Abhay has also been a part of a lot of international committees with a few countries. And before SEPC, Dr. Abhay was the Senior Director of Farm Excel. We all know about this organization. So very warm welcome, Dr. Abhay. I'm so happy that you found time to join us today and share your inputs. Dr. Abhay, since you have spent a lot of time on international collaborations, international policy formulation, will you be able to share with us some insights on how, if the educational organizations, they adopt standardization, how would that support in the international exchange of educational services, or I must say internationalization? So what kind of improvements can we see in that? Over to you, Dr. Sinha.
Thank you, Aarti, and thank you, everyone. And it's a privilege for me as well to be a part of this gathering. And you see, like I just finished one of our own webinar, and I believe, Aarti, we had invited you for that because of this coincidental another webinar coming up at your end. You could not join. So there we were joined by eminent personalities from the education sector. And I will be definitely touching upon certain ideas which are very fresh in my mind, coming out of that particular webinar, which we just concluded 20 minutes back itself. That is one. Second, of course, like I would like to place here for everyone, I have yet to understand the standardization part. Layman's view I'm having, but the kind of ISO's standards are there. Unfortunately, I'm not very well aware of that. And but broadly, I can touch upon the areas from the international perspective. So when I'm talking about international perspective, 2-3 points. One is like my background is actually from pharma in CII. For 12 years, I was in Farm Excel, uh, Pharmaceuticals Export Promotion Council, another organization set up by Ministry of Commerce for promotion of pharma products, your formulation, APIs, and all those things. Now there, very important point is regulation, international regulation. So whether you call it a standardization by a given country or compliances, more or less they mean the same thing, that you have to comply with certain guidelines to be able to export or to be able to import. Now there are institutions for that. And not only, say for example, if a product is being exported outside, it has to go through a registration process. And once the registration process uh, you know is over, you are getting market authorization. Any firm can get for a particular product. The story doesn't end there. Even after market authorization based on the documentation part, which was required by a given country, say in case of US, it is US FDA. So they will authorize, but after that, also for every consignment or randomly, your product needs to get through SGS certification or something, it can be actually the product is under vigilance for a long duration of time. So that kind of a standard, I'm aware of that. Now here in education, or if we look from the export perspective, we understand the importance of complying to those guidelines, where you get a market access, where you also encounter certain trade barriers. Now, when I talk about the services sector, and more so about this particular education sector, uh, very briefly, I would like to mention that ACPC is a new organization, rather a new council, set up in 2006 only, so relatively just 15 years of experience, taking care of about 17 sectors, including those champion services sector marked out by the government of India. Education is also one of them. Now, we have been given the mandate to promote education sector for exports. Now, that means there are four ways to promote exports, or there are four ways of exports of education services. One, we call it mode one, that is the digital transfer. So a lot of content-based course, vocational courses, and all those things can get a market. Even for traditional courses, of course, and I'll touch upon that part as well. This is mode one. In mode two, we call it inbound students, foreign students coming to India. So there also like certain points I would like to highlight. The third one is you know setting up permanent institutions like universities going outside and setting up their facilities over there, and there they can repatriate the uh, earnings from there. That is one third mode of export. And fourth is a kind of temporarily nurses from India, or teachers from India can go work there, come back on project kind of basis. So these are the areas. Now, what we look at it, that which mode is regulated or non-regulated, and what kind of international standards are there. Again, here I would like to clarify that I may not be able to define the international, parameters already. For that, I need to, in fact, hear all of you to understand those aspects, various kinds of ISOs which you are having. But you see, like as I mentioned, I just participated and conducted one webinar. A few things have come up. So I would basically look forward to hear on that part. Why we are unable to attract foreign students the way we have more outbound students? There is a difference of the standards, the brand equity of the institutions. So maybe the lack of standards might be affecting. That could be one way. When we talk about the content also, one of very prominent speaker highlighted about our content not up to the mark of the, at par with the international level. So what could be the reason? Another one, when we are trying to set up the institutions, of course, then one has to comply with the local standards. So that can be taken care. But the most important part is, say, for example, hospitals or any educational institution outside may would like to hire teachers from India or nurses from India. Are we catering to the standards there? Language issues could be there. So all those points actually look from the perspective of the quality, the standardization. In what way are there enough tools already there, which the education sector looking forward for any export opportunity may not be aware. And I think I do believe that many institutions are not even aware. Most of the universities are also not aware about it. So maybe that perspective I thought to bring it, and that's where I end with questions. I'm actually here to understand those aspects, which through our institution we can create that kind of awareness in times to come with your organization. Thank you again for inviting me, and these were my limited points. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dr. Abhay. Thank you so much. Very, very valid points. And I think two very pertinent points that you've highlighted. is one, when the foreign students are coming to our institutions here, they want these standards, they want quality, they want those kind of systems that we are able to attract more students from the other countries. And the second point that you said was we need to validate our content, the curriculum that we are offering, if it really meets the needs of the stakeholders. So the conformity assessments do take care of both these aspects. And despite of your limited knowledge on ISO 21001 standard, I think you've been able to highlight the need very well from the government perspective. I think our next speaker can add a lot of value to what you said, because Dr. Chandrakant Tiwari is our next speaker, and Dr. Tiwari is the one who has already implemented the standard. Dr. Tiwari has headed the training vertical of IOCL. The training vertical is known as IIPM. It is the, I must say, a very, very elite leadership training institute for IOCL. And he's the ex-ED of IOCL. So Dr. Tiwari has spent a lot of time in the oil and energy industry, and he's skilled in team motivation. Of course, I know him. I've spoken to him a lot of times, and he's an excellent orator. Very passionate L&D professional. So he understands the L&D sector very well. And learning and development sector is one such sector where the standard is being implemented in a beautiful way. I have seen with a few countries that. And so Dr. Tiwari can add a lot of value to this. When Dr. Tiwari did his BE from University of Roorkee, it was called as University of Roorkee, and now we fondly call it as IIT Roorkee. So thank you so much, sir. And I would also like to highlight that he is the first person or the first institute, IIPM in India, which is a PSU institute that has bagged the ISO 21001 certificate, an accredited ISO 21001 certificate. This was a tweet by the head HR, director HR of IOCL. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. And we are looking forward to your inputs. So since you have already implemented the standard, I would like to know from you, since the time you've done this, you have spent a lot of time in your institute, the whole team was engaged, involved. What has been the impact of this certification in the L&D sector specifically? Or how do you see the stakeholders reacting to it? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam Aarti Khoshla. First of all, I am not a doctor. I am a simple engineer. But yes, I'm passionate about whatever I do. So thank you very much for that. Everybody who has joined the webinar, Madam Khosla, and dear respected and learned panelists who are along with me, the boys and girls, the ladies and gentlemen, everyone welcome. And it's a privilege and honor for me to share my experience about standards for the L&D institutes. All the countries are celebrating the World Accreditation Day today. And the theme which is given by the IEF and ILAC is how accreditation and accredited conformity assessment activities support the implementation of UN Sustainable Goals. See, what is the objective? It's not only the standards which are there. UN SDGs are looking for their compliance towards the standardized education. It's a real honor and privilege for the education sector that the world as a whole is looking for change through the education. Can I ask a question? I know you are on webinar. You may not be in a question to answer still. Normally, I ask a question. How many of you really think that systems have potential to transform people and process? What I'm trying to say that respect for systems will come only when we feel that systems have a potential to transform process and people. Believe me, L&D can facilitate this transformation by changing the process in people. Nothing great has ever changed without killing desire and live or dynamic management and control systems. The change begins with dynamic management, live to the changes required. Otherwise, as the earlier speaker said, you just drain your energy. Even for the routines, you just drain your energy. Firefighting kind of things continues. Neither the process gets standardized, nor the results can be predicted. In fact, we have to move through the education from survival to sustenance, or in fact, one step beyond, sustenance to overall satisfaction of associated group members, be it the learners, be it the faculty members, be it the institutes. If we look at the SDG 4, 10, and 11, which is the objective. All standards, all SDGs are talking, goals are talking about quality education, reduced inequality, and making a society which is inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. In my opinion, if we club the SDG 4 and the ISO 21001 standards, probably that will give a kind of management system which can play a pivotal role in building sustainable, inclusive, and resilient societies. Let me share my first-hand experience of ISO 21001 at IIPM. I take pride in sharing what Madam Aarti has already said. We became the first PSU training center to be accredited ISO 21001. Prior to this, we were actually in dilemma. We understood, we realized that quality not achieved or quality not delivered to the learners is, it's not correct. Quality is not accidental. It is the result of strong management systems. Quality not delivered is the quality denied to the learners. So both these things are not good for the learning institutes. How the journey began for us? We were actually looking answer for an age-old question. Should the trainings be there in the organizations? Forget the institutes where the basic or the formal education is given. The trainings in the organization, should it be there or not? Training vertical. Are we really a partner with the performance and the perception of the pupil that yes, we are the strategic business partner? These things do not happen. L&D doesn't get its due share in celebrating the performance success of the organization. But we took it up front, looked at it, why it is happening. We reviewed the process of L&D, need, content, pedagogy, delivery, feedback, extended feedback, and whatnot. It was time we encountered ISO 21001, and we decided to go for it. In fact, we embraced it in letter and spirit. We shortlisted the long duration flagship programs which the Institute conducts, engagement during the program to extended feedback. Normally we work on 10 to 5 kind of concept. We said, no, it has to be, let's say 6 to 8. Why not, once the participants are undergoing a residential program, why not we engage them right from morning till late evening? We encourage them to identify what they need to do and gave it to them to do it. Started with yoga, concluded with the pre-dinner talks with the leaders of within the organization to the outside organizations. The renowned professionals were also invited to interact with them besides the course content. And all this created wonders. Participants started feeling the program in the institute are meant for them. Programs are meant for the purpose of the organization. This is not the, just for, we have an MOU that you have to have certain mandates for the training. It's not for that. All these changes were visualized and the internal stakeholders started communicating to us without any formal communications. In fact, they started contributing the way the institute should function. So in fact, the positive feedback, in fact, we call it negative, but the feedback which has potential to help us to design the programs started flowing without being asked. And one thing which happened unexpectedly, not thought of, but very pleasant phenomena. The participants, after attending the program, once they went back, they started behaving differently. Well, I'm not saying that they have started differently, means they started behaving in a different manner. They started participating or sharing their knowledge with the participants there. And a new kind of phenomena started, that the excellence which we are giving to less number of participants, they started sharing it with other members. In fact, we call it the jump, joyfully unfurling mutual potential, a phenomena where the one member trained encouraged the team as a whole to be excellent or source or pocket of excellence. This phenomena was visualized by the senior leaders, and thereafter the things started. We were in the journey, ISO 21001. We came across, there is a saying, brave. There is a saying that opportunity knocks the doors of the braves. So we happened to meet Madam Aarti Khosla. I don't know whether it was accidental or it was planned, but then we did not leave the opportunity. And we got the first-hand experience how ISO 21001 can be actually built on. We had the process going on, but then her intervention, the intervention from COAE, helped us to refine the process and come out with the excellent process. Some of the intangible benefits, which I personally feel, I have shared the things, improvement in L&D system as a whole, enhanced reputation of educational institute, provide personalized training. In fact, one phenomena where the participants started asking us, can you help us on this? So that means the expectations which they had from the institutes started flowing to us. And we were literally forced to come out with the programs which the participants need. It was really a wonderful experience. Uh, what more? Let's say it's fascinating to see that education and its management systems are getting special attention in achieving SDGs of the United Nations. Let me refrain from political definitions of education, what the SDGs define. I can only say that to change the societal fabric holistically, education is the only tool. Even though the instant outcomes may not be guaranteed, but in the long run, the augmented educational processes or the procedures aligned with ISO 21000 guidelines will make it more effective and efficient and offer personalized experience. Why focus on education and why educational organizations? There is an old saying in Sanskrit, Vidya dadati vinayam vinyad yadi patratam dharmapnodi dhanata dharmam tatah sukha. That means long back in the Hindu mythology, we realized that if we have to change, it's only the education. Therefore, I holistically feel that change has to begin with the education. And it's a wonderful tool. Education and deep-rooted culture are the beginning for any sustained revolution. If you are ready to start, it's my message particularly for the institutes who are actually in the business of education and the organizations which are having their L&D verticals. If you are ready to start your journey for quality education, ISO 21001 certification management systems are the need of the hour. First step would be to collaborate, because let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not do the firefighting. The standards are available. Let's collaborate with the organizations like COE, who are more than willing to assist us in establishing and demonstrating their commitment for quality education. I would like to conclude with expressing my sincere thanks and compliments to organizers, especially Madam Aarti Khosla, for inviting me and organizing this unique initiative for educational institutions and organizations to be early starters and contributors for giving fruits of the quality education to society at large. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And thank you for the honest sharing about your own experiences. I think two very important points that I would like to pick up from what you shared was that engagement of people increased to a great level. Knowledge sharing started happening. People went back and they are further training everyone. And the feedback that's flowing in, that's helping you to achieve your outcomes. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have our next speaker with us, Dr. Sitaram Soni. Dr. Sitaram Soni is the IQAC director and professor at the Flame University. So IQAC is that one department in most of the universities, especially in the higher education, that takes care of the quality at all the levels. And Dr. Soni is one of the passionate leaders who is totally committed to quality and improvements. Dr. Soni did his master's from IIT Mumbai and then his doctorate from IIIT Jabalpur. And I think it's been a long time. He's worked with the university as a vice chancellor. He's also been the principal of the engineering institutes, and now he's with the Flame University. So Dr. Soni, welcome to this program. And I would request you to share your thoughts, because you have been with IQAC and you have faced a lot of assessments. And now you have also taken the decision to going for the ISO 21001 certification. So you know that your university is going through a lot of audits before you achieve the certification. So what is your take on the need for these audits or the third-party certifications as an enabler for continual improvement and quality education? Over to you, Dr. Soni.
Thank you, Ms. Aarti, and thank everybody for this wonderful opportunity to interact with you. And thanks for the nice introduction. Being associated for last 15 to 20 years in education and before that in industry, I come with a kind of, a strange blend where things have been often contradicting in my own understanding. And being in education, I have been the most vocal critic of the current education system, because with due respect to everybody, even having the 23 IITs, we could not produce any technology which could help us in this COVID pandemic for last 2 years. So despite having big institutions, big outlay of money, government support, systems, process, best of the institutions, and almost no interference from any other agency, still our processes have not been so productive, I would say, that they could produce any useful technology for the country when we were in distress. We might have been developing technology for writing papers or producing graduates who are serving and doing great things in when they join multinationals, but that is more to say about their own efforts and intelligence rather than contribution of the systems and processes from where they have graduated. So I am a very strong advocate of having the right processes and systems in place. Unfortunately, for 5,000 years, we have been claiming to be the Vishwa Guru, and it has kind of got into our understanding that whatever we do as a teacher or whatever we do as an institution is right. And it certainly leads to all kinds of weaknesses, shortcomings, irregularities, and misalignments. And ultimately, it leads that we are educating, we are teaching, but we are not producing the kind of people or kind of graduates we should produce. So I strongly advocate that we should have a third party accreditation, because they come with a fresh perspective, independent lens, and of course, without any colored uh, goggles, which give them a rosy picture which they want to see. So accreditation has to be, of course, third party and independently done by anybody who is not having their own interest in the system. So that's the need. I would go a little bit, because I have been playing this devil's advocate role, especially when it comes to education, despite being for almost 20 years into education, and try to put up things in the right perspective, bringing management, especially the senior teachers, and especially those who are coming from the, part of their service being in the government, they come with a very specific mindset and very difficult to change. There has to be have to have some fundamental questions answered. Why we are teaching? What is education? Or is the education what we have been doing for last so many years is the real education? And are we really contributing to people's life, development of the country and society in general by our education system? Or we are just following some kind of parampara or some kind of syllabus coverage and giving the rituals of doling out degrees and just continuing with this mindset that we are educating people. And recent engineering education is the biggest example of not having right kind of systems and processes in place. And we are producing engineers who are almost 90% of the engineers are not employable. As Mr. Sinha was telling that there is he does not understand what is standard in education. And precisely is my apprehension and doubt that how we design the standards, because we have given this responsibility or onus to decide standards, curriculum, even the evaluation process, even the feedback process, how the feedback should be taken to the people who have been doing the process. So it's like kind of the accused himself is the judge. So if you give me some rights to share my screen, I would like to show something which is important as far as design of new systems and processes, which are important, and what is, if we are going for this new ISO education systems and process, it should not be just following certain standards mapped onto the education, but there are certain pertinent questions which need to be answered before we even design systems and processes. So just one or two slides I would like to bring to the notice of the people, because this is important to understand that we understand the education first and what we really want to achieve from education. Is my screen visible to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I'll just, very briefly, because I'm a teacher, so having a very innate inclination towards presentation. So this is, see, we say education, and I think people from industry might understand that first question to be answered is that what is actually education? Is it a process or is it a service? If we consider this to be a process, then the student should be considered a product, or if it is service, a student should be considered a customer, because these two line of thinking would lead to a very different set of systems and process and feedback and measuring systems to be developed. And the most important thing is that whether these quality conformity is, because it's easy to standardize, because we can follow a common systems and processes to have the identical products. But educational institutes are not created to produce identical products. They are created to produce prodigies, geniuses, creative people, and outliers who can actually change the society. Until unless we are developing an education institute just to produce programmers who are having the same kind of skills in Java or C++, apart from that, we need to have an education system which follows systems and processes which are catering to produce these attributes. So there are certain attributes, I'll quickly go, that these are certain attributes which we need to have. What is measurable in education? If we can measure it, we can monitor it, we can audit it, and we can control it. But when it comes to Bloom's taxonomy, just the cognitive level. Pardon? If we measure,
Go ahead, sir.
yeah, if we just try to see.
Dr. Soni, just a small request. If we can just focus on the question, the key parameter, because we have a question answer round in the end. So in case viewers have some specific questions, they will definitely be addressed to you.
Sure. So my submission is just to that, whatever systems and processes we design for accreditation auditing, the systems and processes have to be mapped for education. And if we go if we see the measurability of different Bloom's taxonomy domain, the skills, the lowest possible skill is measurable, very well measurable. But as we go further up, the measurability reduces. And this is just the cognitive domain, whereas the real education says that we need to have education in these three domains, which is the cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain. This is the formal structure of designing the education per se. So when we say education, it should cater to cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain. And this is the good measurement systems for remembering, but we do not have any measurement system for higher order thinking skills, and that too just in cognitive domain. Our education systems do not have anything to be measuring on this one and anything to be measuring on affective domain, which are very important. And now in the current context and future, this is the curve we expect, that these are the attributes a graduate should have. So to achieve these graduates, attainment of these attributes is important, and standardization, auditing, and accreditation should be able to address this question. So my request is that when the internationalization has given us the graduate attributes in every domain, what we should try to see that our processes, systems are in place which can cater to these attributes rather than having some process and developing measurement system and auditing system to those processes. It is very important to see that whether our processes are aligned to these graduate attributes or not. So that is what is my submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Soni, and thank you for sharing all this information on the Bloom's taxonomy. I think most of us today here will be able to relate with it. And I know you're a big advocate of the unconventional and liberal education. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, so let us move on, and I invite our next speaker, Mr. Sunil Khamani, who is from UAE. Mr. Sunil has been an expert in the quality field, and he has done a lot of work there. He is the CEO of his organization, that is Quality Indeed Consulting, and he's an engineer, an MBA, more than 28, 29 years he's spent in the management experience. He's worked with various kinds of organizations, and he has also led a very important initiative in UAE that is about the award that goes to the South Asian quality professionals. He's a member of the jury. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sunil Khamani. And for you, based on your experience, please can you highlight, as Dr. Soni has already spoken about having processes, having the right processes. So I think you can build on the same topic and share with us what is the significance of having a process approach, and how can this lead to the high performance of the educational institutions?
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Good morning to good afternoon to good evening, everyone. Are you able to see the screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for great insights from very learned people, right from Dr. Tiwari, where I had opportunity to do one re-engineering workshop way back in mid-90s in your institute. And also very happy to hear about the SCPC, which Dr. Abhay Sinha talked about. So my focus is about operations, the execution, the way we do the things. You see, this is a picture where every enterprise has. Every enterprise is subjected to external and internal characteristics and forces. These days, as we are experiencing this COVID, the external forces have become tremendously impacting our internal operations. Importance and urgency has become the same thing now. You see, the enterprise, let's take a university or a college or a school, experiences the forces of 6C, I call it: cost pressures, customer pressures, complexity, change, everything focuses. Now here, your customers here has an emotional element. It's not only the children, but their parents are also the customers. Suppliers, you may be having outsourced the operation of the buses, fleet of buses to transport children. Then you got a education authority or a university regulatory authority, like here we got Knowledge Development Authority, Abu Dhabi Education Council, which mandates the regulation. Then you got investors. Under this framework, a school or a university has to operate and achieve its goals. To do that, it needs to have processes and procedures to execute. It is the process which is at the heart of any enterprise. It is the DNA of the business. As just now the previous learned speaker, Dr. said, it is the systems which will deliver value. Now, it's common sense. You speak to 1,000 people, all 1,000 will agree. But what's the reality on the ground? If you just look at this picture here, this is the reality. Process is flowing from one department to another, but in a very haphazard manner. It's not a smooth flow. A child is admitted in the school, so there's a registration department. And then there is accounts, which has to pay the fees. And then there's a teacher who has to design the curriculum to meet that child's development need. If you just take Amazon, the moment I click and place a purchase order, inside Amazon, a flurry of processes get unleashed. It goes to the supplier, it goes to the accounts, it goes to communication, goes to packaging, and so on. Ideally, this should be a straight, smooth line, delivering satisfaction. But this is what is the reality if you just peep into the organization. With all due respects to audits and certification agencies, they focus on procedures in each department and they lack end-to-end process management. Many a times they will not take a sample which flows from getting the child admitted right up to passing out. They may look at different departments to do audits. Or if you take a business, they will not pick up from the placing an order till the delivery is met. And then this is what we are used to working. This is Adam Smith, 1776. Silos and functional boundaries are more important than the process flow. So this is the reality, and what happens? Customer gets inconsistent quality. Customer dissatisfaction. You can't deploy the strategy. We got 9 out of 10 major projects, including in developed nations, get delayed. I'm talking of multi-billion-dollar projects like setting up an Olympic city or building a downtown in some country or putting up a metro project. As a result, companies' image get dented. People have struggled to do the job done, and the cost of poor quality is very high. 5 to 7% is supposed to be in a top-notch company like Toyota's and Lexus. Reality is 25%. You can easily shave off a lot of cost by effective process management. Now you are in education sector, right? Let me give you a scenario. Let's say you have a student, Sunil, he's 25 years, passing out of the college today. I will be working, as we say, inshallah, for the next 40 years. As I'll be working till 2060, 2065. What kind of competencies and skill sets and mindsets and culture development I will need to serve the society in 2030, 2040, 2045? What are the learners' needs for the future? You see, your organization, the industry, is building future leaders, future champions, future workforce. So it's absolutely critical to know what should be the curriculum today. I think the standard is talking about context of the organization in which you are operating. You have a huge, huge responsibility. You see, I had opportunity to listen to Tony Blair, ex-Prime Minister of England. He said it so nicely, I think we all know. Earlier, children used to go to school to get information. Today, they get information everywhere free. They are not going to school to get information from the teacher. They are going there to get skills which they need for the next few years. And what are those skills? There are a lot of studies, World Economic Forum to other studies, critical thinking, analytical mindsets. You see, there's one company which hired about 500 people. I think it's Amazon or Google Analytics or someone, I don't remember. Out of 500, some 450 plus people they hired were mathematicians to write algorithms. Then we need creative thinking, collaborative working, and so on and so forth. So Yuval Hariri has written a very beautiful chapter on this. Now, looking at this context, you need to develop your education management system with processes. Now, these processes should be effective. You see, I'm in this business for the last 30 years. I've come across all kind of management systems, whether it is 31,000, 9,000, 41,000. Take HSE, Health Safety Standard 41,001. No company had did the risk assessment for any COVID-related infection, and there are thousands of companies certified to ISO 45000 or OSAS. Effectiveness is very, very critical. And then comes efficiency. Now, efficiency is defined to be effective at the least cost. The two are related. Now, the bottom line is the adaptability. And this is more relevant today than ever. Organization is a dynamic living organism. Professor Ishikawa says, if your procedure has not changed in the last 6 months, you are dead. The processes need to be remain adaptable while being effective and efficient. Now, what happens is IT system comes in, we decide to have ERP, or we change the org structure. Laws and regulations change. They do not get integrated into the processes and systems. Processes are somewhere else, reality is somewhere else. Now, to succeed, to sustain, to deliver the value ISO 21001 wants us to get, focus needs to be on management systems and processes, right? And every time I read Dr. Deming's this quote, I get angry, I get upset, I get inspired. A bad system will always beat a good person every time. And we have seen this. I don't have to say this. I'm really happy on one way to hear Dr. Abhay Sinha about Service Export Promotion Council. India has a long way to go to improve its service quality. You look at the service standards, whether it is healthcare or retail, or it is ordinary organization. We are way behind the global international standards. You ask people, have you heard of Service Excellence Framework, SERQUAL model? They would know. So these are the best practices which need to be integrated into education management system, into the processes and service standards. So with this, I just have 7 minutes time. I'll just repeat what I said. Success in achieving the business strategy, objectives and goals is heavily dependent on large, complex, cross-functional business processes which even flow beyond your organization, your outsourced suppliers into the total value chain. With this, I thank you, RTG, and the Center of Assessment for Excellence for this opportunity. I really appreciate the work you are doing. And Dr. Abhay, we can have a separate conversation. I can share with you the leaders of UAE, how they have improved the quality of service, right from laundry to taxis to healthcare to government service delivery and so on. I've been with the government for 10, 15 years with the digital authority and beyond. Thank you very much once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Sunil Khamani. I'll get in touch with you. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your thoughts on importance of processes and how we can integrate the processes into our practices. The overall coordination is what is important. Now, Mr. Sunil Khamani has already mentioned about context of the organization. Continuing with that, I would like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Kshitij Awasthi. And Dr. Kshitij Awasthi is going to further add value to this topic that we've already picked up. Dr. Kshitij is a highly accomplished person. He's the assistant professor for strategic management at IIM Lucknow, and he did his PhD from IIM Bangalore. His research includes the corporate political activities and their effect on different aspects of business performance, corporate governance, as well as health, education, energy policies. So with this experience, let me welcome Dr. Kshitij. And Dr. Kshitij, I have a very straight question for you, on which you're already working in your organization, and that has been your experience throughout. So what is the importance, or what is the role that strategic management plays in effective governance of an educational organization? So how should the vision, the strategy, the goals, the risk management, all of that can lead to an effective governance of an educational institute? Over to you, Dr. Kshitij.
Thank you so much, Aarti ma'am, and for inviting me for, I'm happy to be part of this panel and deliberating on some important things. And a special congratulations for having this forum where people can express their views on something which is very important for education sector, that is the accreditation. Now, about your question that you asked, and which is exactly in line with what Mr. Khamani was saying just before. And if I have to borrow his slide, I will put that red circle just above where he has put his circle. So I will rather talk about strategies and organization goal and vision and its importance, and rather than processes that he has already elaborated. Now, even though I have made a couple of slides, but I would rather like to talk because it is helpful in interest of time, and also it helps me communicate more with my mind rather than whatever I have written. So first thing first, I would put, if I have to answer your thing, like educational institutions have to realize one thing which is very important, that they are organizations. They also require, which other organizations require, such as legitimacy, relevance, growth, sustainability. All these things are important. Which are important for corporates. These are important for government organization, NGOs, any organization which is there. And that means, if I have to underline it, it has to be a professional approach to delivery of education. That is what it is needed. And then it starts with where Dr. Soni was worried, and that is vision and mission. So why we are having this disconnect between people who are trying to the kind of students we are trying to produce, the kind of output that we are generating, and the kind of output we should be generating, is that perhaps many of those educational institutions are not able to realize their vision. So if for example, for a matter, because I am Lucknow, I have more freedom to take its example than anything else. Again, I will not put my slide here or the website, but I will just read out the sentence. It is, vision is to be a preeminent center of excellence, generating and imparting knowledge in management and providing socially conscious, globally relevant thought leadership. What it does, it is not a simple statement. Whenever we take any big decision, whether it is review of programs, it is new opening of new programs, it is also about new centers, whatever, budgetary allocation, we always look where our vision is and where we are intending to go. I think that is important for every institution, small or big, to have something. You call it mission, you call it vision, you call it reason, dare, trade, like where you want to be, but it has to have there at the first place, because it will then drive different things, different decision making, including whether you are going for accreditation. If you also look at some point of time, as time goes, sometimes this vision itself might need change. One, it might have been completed, and other reason might be that it is no more contextual with the given time frame. So that is another thing. You have to first start with that vision. And ma'am, as you talked about so many different aspects, perhaps I will not be able to cover in that short span of time that we have. And I would also like to hear my other co-panelists, eminent co-panelists, I would say. But I would definitely talk on two smaller aspects of it. One is you mentioned about risk reduction. So risk reduction is again a topic in itself, but a very important thing to do here, possibly for educational institutions, because they work in their own ways, as silos. Mr. Khamani mentioned, their own departments working for it, and staff, faculty, and groups are there. So risk reduction can come from somebody who is continuously either looking outside the organization, who is looking what is happening in surrounding, whether research is increasing, whether policy is increasing, whether we are looking for more accreditations, I mean, where all it is headed, what kind of education, what kind of services our client is thinking from us, or whether it is digital medium which is coming, the sort of things that we are here, or whatever is going on. So there should be people or a team which is continuously looking at it to reduce the effect that environment can pose to institutions. And if you see last 10 years, there has been huge shift in education. I am part of management education, and I can tell about how research has come prominently in last 10, 12 years in this sector, as well as the importance of MOOC and online education, some broader trends. And this is something that you always have to look forward to. The other thing is accreditation. I have been part of, when I was a PhD student, I am in Bangalore. Bangalore was going for EQUIS accreditation. And recently, when I was part of faculty group, Lucknow went for ASCA CSB accreditation. Let me tell you, when any educational institutes look at this thing, I'll just take 2 more minutes to conclude, not too much time, is that it is a cost. No, it is not a cost. It is an investment. Why it is an investment? It will bring you those things that you have envisioned, which every organization needs. It will give you growth. It will give you collaboration with other institutions inside or outside your country. It will also give you legitimacy among the peer institutions. It will facilitate your student collaborations, student exchanges, and so on, as mentioned by Dr. Sinha earlier. It will also provide you relevance to the world. And one more thing that we often miss when we talk about certifications is that it also gives a chance to look inwards. So whenever you go for certification, there are different processes that they audit. Your team, for example, would be auditing. So we have to think why we are doing so. Is it relevant? It is not relevant. If it is relevant, is there any system, or we are doing it ad hoc level? So once this process is completed, then you suddenly find that your system is much more fine-tuned, and it is also, to borrow what Dr. Sinha was saying earlier, it is also catering to different stakeholders. So we also get more holistic perspective in our thinking, and that's where educational institutions can grow and they can fulfill their societal demands. Thank you.
So well said, Dr. Kshitij, very well said. And in the vision of the organization can really take you a long way, and you can achieve whatever you want if you have a strong vision and you're working on it. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. With this, I would request our next speaker. So each and every speaker, an eminent speaker and with a lot of experience. I'm so happy that so much of thought sharing is happening today. And the next speaker is Ms. Ravneet Pahwa. Ms. Ravneet Pahwa is currently the Deputy Vice President of the Deccan University. She is also the CEO South Asia for Deccan University, Australia, and the President of Australia-India Business Council. She is an award-winning business leader in education sector, more than 28 years of experience. I welcome you, Ms. Ravneet, to this webinar, and a very important aspect that I would want you to touch upon. There's an important principle of the standard, the ISO 21001 standard, and that principle is the first and the foremost principle. It says, focus on learners and other beneficiaries. How does this principle help an educational organization to achieve excellence? Over to you, Ms. Ravneet.
Thanks very much, Aarti, and I'll keep myself brief. I've got about 5-7 minutes to speak. I think the first and the most important aspect to always remember, who is the stakeholder? And in this case, the stakeholder, which is at the very center, is the learner. Pursuit of excellence in education, research, and training is often accompanied by a commitment to greater access for the aspiring learners. It is about actually delivering progress across society, prioritizing equity, and also the opportunity that we are able to provide. We are not defined by these we exclude, but by the opportunities we actually create. And I think that's very, very important to understand. For an education provider to achieve excellence and the importance of ISO 2021 and really focusing on sustainability goals, I'd like to highlight 9 guiding principles which would help to develop an approach which would benefit key beneficiaries: students, faculty, parents, and education providers themselves. I think the first and the very foremost one to remember is an atmosphere of intellectual excitement. Whether you put the learner in the center of it, or you put the teacher in the center of it, or you put the ambience around it, it's a very, very important part of whatever we do, wherever in the world we do this. We have to invest in people, we have to invest in technology, we have to build capacity, we have to focus on adaptability, learning aspect, digital fluency, and boosting collaboration. In this world of today and age, without collaboration with the right people at the right time, most institutions would struggle going forward. That's the first thing I think that is most important. The second one really is an intensive research and knowledge transfer, culture permitting all teaching and learning activities. At Deakin University, we believe that you impart education, for citizens of tomorrow, and you do research that impact the societies you live in. And without those 2 guiding principles, I believe that education institutions will struggle to go a long way. It is very important to understand that to accelerate the translational discoveries and ideas into new policy, knowledge, products, and services, it is very important to strengthen that with the learner and our societies in the very center as stakeholders. It's very important to nurture ideas generated through research, create endeavors and innovative principles. And coming back to your point about standardization and accreditation, I think that sits in the very center of this. And India, with the new education policy, has now come to a point where it's starting to realize this. We've got a long way to go, but I don't think we're going to take that long as other countries may have taken. There's a lot of learning out there that we can partner with countries, with institutions, and progress this much faster than the other. I might refer to the NEP also towards my end, but I think I'll just go through the 9 points first. The third one that I really want to talk about is social context, a vibrant and embracing social context. We need, as educational institutions, to be the catalyst for positive change, not just for individuals, but for societies that we work in. And again, having the learner in the center of it is absolutely critical, because they are going to be the future citizens of tomorrow and will be instrumental in changing the world as we see it. The fourth point that I'd like to make is explicit concern and support for individual development. Like they say, the change has to happen with you first, then, with your home, then with your society, and then with the country, and then with the world at large. If we don't believe and provide a 360-degree student support environment, we are unlikely to be successful. We must include things like, somebody talked about skills. I mean, in today's world and age, education, knowledge, skills, and research all go hand in hand. And institutions of eminence need to focus on these as important as just anything else in their institutions. We must include support services like talent and skill development, counseling, medical mentorship, and all of those. Embedded focus on where the employability sector is going into the future. What is work integrated learning looking like? And how do we develop the future workplace and the future work requirements? So I think those are important parts from a learner perspective for any institution to think about. The other point that I'd like to make is communicate expectations and standards in terms of teaching, learning, and research initiatives. It is central to identity of the provider. Develop a status confirmed by national rankings for good teaching, generic skill development, things like these, which are really important, graduate qualities and student satisfaction. And, between Australia and India, I've seen this, there is a very close bond. Australia has a very strong skill development center and a higher education sector. India is developing its skill centers, and it has a strong base foundation of higher education, but still a long way to go in terms of accreditation and in terms of standardization. But there is a lot of learning and a lot of transfer of skills between the two countries that is currently taking place. So I think that is a very important part. Number 6 is deploy innovative digital technology. Like COVID has really taught us that, it's not going to be the same world anymore. We are going to struggle. We are going to be different. The new normal is going to be the new normal. What does that really mean? We have to learn to deliver outstanding digital capabilities that seamlessly have a blended approach. The future, my friends, from my perspective, is going to be in future blended learning and teaching technologies. We must ensure that technology is human-centric, it is ethical, it is robust, it is protecting the data privacy of all our people and partners. Integrate our online platforms to develop education research and innovative portfolios is a must. Greater inclusion, effectiveness, efficiency, and engagement is important. Basically focusing on strategic growth of self, of the institute, and of the country. The next point that I'd like to make is premium quality learning spaces, resources, and technologies. Invest in delivery of outstanding online education. I know that India is at a struggle point because, we are talking about online education, but we have a whole lot of issues around connectivity, around people in the rural areas without any connection. I think we'll have to divide this into two very different parts. One is education for all, and that needs to be at a different scale, at a different level. The other is education with excellence, which has to be at the very, very top level. And I think that's also where we need to focus on blended models and work through workplaces and aim to be more human-centric and creating the teaching, learning, research cultures in our new age organizations between India and other parts of the world. The 8th point is encourage active learning and adaptive pedagogy and curriculum. Now, curriculum sits in the center of it with the learner, but how you deliver the curriculum is also very important. I know that, we had to move overnight into a digital mode at all levels. But my personal view is India did well in that, but we've got a long way to go in how we were able to do that. At Deakin University, in a span of 12 hours, we were able to move 60,000 students in various parts of the world completely online. Now, that is because we have been doing digital education and technology. We have invested a lot in innovative technology over the last 10 years. So there is no shortcut to this. You've got to go through the grind, and you've got to go through the system and the processes to make it happen. I think co-design courses with industry partners, integrating workplace experiences is a very important part, and also ensuring that we do look at the futuristic goals of workability. The last point that I'd like to make in this section is deliver impact both locally and globally. There is no point in having an education institution without the robust internationalization strategy. We must strive and must connect and broaden understanding of diverse people and places. We must create networks, both nationally and internationally. And I think designing and implementing distinctive hybrid models of engagement will be actually our key future as we go into the next phase of engagement. The new education policy, so those were my 9 points really from a learner perspective, but I don't know if I have but 1 more minute to go, but I'd like to just highlight the 9 points of our new education policy, which are almost around the points that I have been talking about. The first it talks about is creating world-class education with excellence. Now that's where standardization comes into play. That's where accreditation comes into play. And I think sustainability goals and ISO 2021 play a very important role. The second it talks about is multidisciplinary act. And without this, we are not able to go forward. Gone are the days when education needs to be in silos. I think one of the early speakers mentioned that. We need to have a blended approach in terms of curriculum, in terms of discipline. The third is regulatory transforms. I think we really need reforms in our Indian system, and we can learn from various countries that have dealt with this. Expansion with quality and access is a very important part of one of our goals. Research ecosystem that makes a difference. Faculty focus and training. Without training, we will not be able to deliver excellence. Governance and leadership, I think. Academic freedom, public funding and private partnerships, internationalization with accreditation and digitization. I think these are the important aspects of futuristic education, and these are the important parts of education that we must think about from a learner and a teacher perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ravneet. Interesting content, and blended learning and teaching technologies is, of course, the need of the hour now. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Our next speaker is Dr. Mauricio Cardenas from Mexico. A warm welcome, Dr. Mauricio. Dr. Mauricio is the CEO of ACCM America, and he has some very, very practical experience of, again, conformity assessments in ISO 21001 for the education sector. And he himself has been involved with the education planning, teaching, and evaluation at various levels. Over to you, Dr. Mauricio. And from your experience, we would really like to understand one very important aspect. Since in Mexico, you already audited a lot of educational organizations, what, according to you, is the importance of the standard specifically in school education? Since the previous speakers have already spoken about the higher education and L&D. So please, if you can emphasize a little on school education and what role the national bodies and the governments are playing in this. Over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank again to the Center of Assessment of Excellence, and particularly to you, Arti, for the invitation. It's a real challenge in 5 or 7 minutes to try to explain all this whole and complex point about the importance of ISO 21001. As you know, we have been working in this standard in the international part as a consensus. We worked on that for more than 6 years, and we tried to have the more accomplished standard in order to comply with the requirements that can be applied all over the world. The first thing that I want to say in order to explain the importance of this standard is that it was made to comply with the requirement to have one and only standard for education. This is not an ISO 9001 aligned standard. You know, this is a high level structure standard. We use the high level structure standard used for ISO to have a management system standard, but by itself, it's an educational standard. And the most important thing that we can say is that this standard is a requirement standard. So it has all the 10 parts that we have in the high level structure, but also we have guidelines to apply this standard. We have 7 annexes to the standard that help us in order to identify which are the critical parts that we have to focus in education. And one of these parts is the one based on the methods, procedures, measures, and tools that help us in education to provide the compliance. So this is a very, very important thing that we have in the standard. And here in my country, we have used this annex in order to provide the accomplish with the measurements and these things. I want to make some history about how we have been working in Mexico. Since the year 2000, the government asked to schools to be certified as ISO 9000 standards, and the government asked the universities to certify at least the administrative processes as ISO 9000. So we had a lot of universities, colleges, technical schools certified as ISO 9000 in different processes. But it was a little bit confusing for the students, for the parents, for the society, because the school used to have this certificate, but it was certifying just a little bit of the administrative process. For instance, a very crazy example that I can share with you is that one school says, I will certify the credential process. When I give the credentials to the students, or when I give the IDs to the students, is a process that I will certify. This don't give any value added to the teaching and learning process, you know? So that's the reason why we ask to have an specific standard in education. The next thing was that we have a lot of accreditation programs. Universities in Mexico ask national and international bodies, specific bodies, for instance, related with engineering, to come and accredit the program, you know? And when we began with this certification process related with management systems, these accreditation bodies that accredited educational programs began to say, okay, let's see how are we going to handle this, because we are doing some part of the process of the educational. We're accrediting the curriculum, but you are certifying the system. How can we handle these two things together, you know? And we could sit together, we can talk together, and we explain that the management system can include the program, the quality program that was accredited by these international or national accreditation bodies for programs, because the curriculum that is already accredited as a quality program is the best raw material in the process of teaching and learning. When I have, for instance, this accredited curriculum, and this is part of this management system, the output is going to be a very good, satisfied learner, parent, society, and everything, because was thinking or was thinked in order to fulfill the requirements of the society, in order to provide the students with the competences and all of these things. Another thing that I have to share with you is that when we finish the standard, we notice that it's very specific for education, and we have to have very, very competent auditors and very competent personnel that is going to work evaluating this standard. So that is part of the competence that has to have the accreditation bodies, the certification bodies, and also the institution that is going to implement the standard. So now we are working as part of the technical committee 232 and also with CASCO, and we are doing a new standard, a guideline that is going to be the 21030, that is going to give the guidelines to be fulfilled for the accreditation, the national accreditation bodies, in order to have the same line, in order to have the same requirements, and with that, all the certification bodies we are going to work with the same requirements. That's a very important thing in which we are working now. And for instance, in Mexico, we have a national development plan, and also we have a sector educational program in which one the government gives financial support to different entities in order to provide quality education, in order to give the more in order to include more people in the system. So in this plan now is written that if a school want to have the accreditation to provide their services, they have to have a management system. So now it's a requirement for the authority. For instance, the schools that are not public, the schools that are owned as a business, they have to comply with a management system in order to be approved by the government and provide services. So again, we have both things. We have the program that is already granted by the authority, by the Ministry of Education, and also the management system that must be evaluated by a third party, a certification body, in order to provide that is effective and has complied with the continuous improvement processes. So I think it's a very, very good thing that now we are doing here in Mexico. And also, well, we are working with auditors that are qualified in education. We are not working with the same auditors that used to work for ISO 9000, because, you know, maybe an engineer, it's a very good auditor for metal and mechanical processes, or to certify or to evaluate or to audit chemical processes, but it's not the same for educational. So we are working now with people from the schools, from the academics, in order to have this level and competence. It's very important for us, in Mexico at least, with the criteria that we established with the Mexican entity, that the people that is going to do the evaluations have a competence in didactical, pedagogical, and all the things that are related with teaching, learning processes, also with research, and also with this part in which one the college is related with the society. We call it the vinculation processes, and also to extend the culture in the society. So it's part of the things that I want to share with you. And well, if there is any question after this, I will be very glad to answer that.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Kadnas. And I'm so happy that you shared about the situation there in Mexico and how government is also supporting it. Thanks a lot for sharing that. And I think we are going to overshoot by at least 10 minutes. So if the audience is fine, please do stay back with us. Because this part is going to be very, very important. Our last speaker is the one who's going to add immense value to why accreditation is needed in the education sector. And after that, we have got two institutions with us today who will be sharing their best practices in just 3 minutes each. We had started an 11-day challenge about 15 days back. I will be sharing with you, and a lot of institutions had participated in that. Before I talk about this, let me please introduce our speaker. Mr. Rajesh Maheshwari. Mr. Rajesh Maheshwari, who is the CEO of the National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies, and he is an expert in accreditation, in the international evaluations, mutual recognition arrangements, regional cooperation in accreditation, project management standards. So all these have been the expertise for Mr. Rajesh, and he's been able to spare time because he was busy with some other webinars also today. So thank you so much, Mr. Maheshwari, for being with us. And please, I would just request you to let us know how accredited conformity assessments can help the education sector. As Dr. Cardenas has already mentioned, that different types of auditors are needed, not the regular industry auditors who can go to the educational institutes and do it. So the competence of the conformity assessments is very important. Please, if you can highlight on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Arti. Good evening to all the distinguished speakers and the participants in the webinar, and thank you COA to invite me on this very important day and to address the participants. As you are all aware, 9th June 2021 is globally celebrated as the World Accreditation Day, and we have been right from the early morning till now, we were in different programs. Global initiative, which is established by the International Accreditation Forum and the International Laboratory Accreditation Corporation to promote accreditation across the world. And this year's theme is very rightly chosen. How does accreditation support the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals? So if you look at the SDG 4, which is on quality education, for any nation to grow or any economy to prosper, you need competent people. I mean, say, as we say, the children and the youth are the future of a country. So if the education is not imparted, or the quality of the education is not good to the students that has been taught, or to the teenagers, the future of the country will not be good. So for me, education is one of the key and the most important factor for the growth and prosperity of any nation, or maybe the economy of any nation. So education, it enables upward socioeconomic mobility and is a key factor to escape poverty. I'm giving the data which is there on the UN Sustainable Development Goals website. You can see this COVID pandemic. So everyone has been hit across the globe. So there were about 260 million children who were out of school in 2018. And this pandemic has changed the figures drastically. It has brought now, in April 2020, the data is some close to 1.6 billion children and youth were out of school. And this is, I'm saying, all these pandemics or all these changes are going to impact the economies, the future of any country or economies. Now, coming to the accreditation and the accredited certification, specifically for the educational sector. As you know, NABCB is one of the boards of the Quality Council of India. We are the national accreditation body providing accreditation to the certification bodies, inspection bodies, and validation verification bodies. So we are part of the international system under IAF and ILAC, and we are signatories to the International Multilateral Mutual Recognition Arrangements, MRAs or MLAs. And if you look at this ISO 21001, this is the management system standard specifically designed for the educational organizations. This has been done by ISO Technical Committee 232, which has also developed a few other standards. 5 more standards are there, and which is in series of 2999 series, and some of them are also relevant. For example, 29993 is for services outside the formal education, and 29994 is for the distance learning. So now, how does this ISO standards or accreditation or accredited conformity assessment help? The whole objective of accreditation is an independent assessment of the conformity assessment activity or whatever activity has been performed, that it is technically is imparted technically correct, meeting all the requirements. So the accreditation lays down the technical foundation for any certification or any conformity assessment. Specifically for the education sector, this was a and CEOE was one of the few bodies, certification bodies, which we have given accreditation. There are in total 6 certification bodies which are accredited by NABCB for the ISO 21001. Now coming to the specifics of this, how does it help the educational institutions? Because this standard covers all aspects which an education institution needs to do, whether it is organization level or maybe planning or maybe the processes or in terms of continual improvement. So it will address all the activities which are being handled by any educational institution, and it can be applied to any kind of educational institution, so that when the certification body goes and certifies, audits that educational institution, the educational institution will demonstrate its competence, not only of the people, I'm saying the teachers or the faculty there, but also of the processes to deliver a good education service, and the processes are robust and the quality of education is good. So it is in a way independent assessment of the services, the educational services, the processes that have been run by that educational institution. My personal view is that if you look at the conformity assessment of products or maybe services globally, the economies rely on accreditation. The regulators, they rely on accreditation. So as NABCB, our accreditations are being recognized by various regulators, whether it is into the oil and gas or food and all those things. But in specifically because in the country we had a few authorities which were already given accreditation, which were running that program, and they were having their own requirements. So they used to give some advantage in terms of when they go and come and assess the educational institution. If an educational institution, for example, there was some weightage given for if an educational institution is ISO 9001 certified. So our intent is to impress upon the relevant authorities, so that if any educational institution is certified for ISO 21001 under the national accreditation, which is NABCB, and the institution can get it done from any of the accredited certification bodies, then this educational institutions should be given due recognition, whatever recognition or approval required, with minimum requirements for an assessment by the relevant authorities. Only those additional requirements needs to be assessed, which are not covered under 21001. So this, I believe, is because the standard was launched a couple of years back, and this is going to change the entire scenario, how the certifications or the accreditations would happen in the education sector. My other view is that now, since it's almost more than 1 year, and there is a new normal getting defined. So previously it used to be the institutions where the students or maybe the children go and get the education. I think somebody was, some of them distinguished speaker was also referring the education which the students get now and the students, the education which the students used to get earlier in the physical institution. So lots of education is getting imparted through online or virtual means, and this is the right opportunity to make sure that whatever education is imparted through the online or the virtual means that is also of high quality. And this is an area, and including the distance learning, which probably can think, innovate, and provide more better means of imparting the education. So there are some areas which in the next coming few years, there's lots of thinking would happen, some innovative practices would come in, and more and more demand for certification or accreditation or accredited certification would be there. So it all depends upon how the consumer behavior, how the consumer patterns change. Previously, it used to be buying all those products from going to the market. Now there's lots of virtual, you call it Amazon or Flipkart. So they are providing you equal good services of delivering those products at your doorsteps. When we are crossing the frontiers of the country, there will be lots of innovations and changes happening in, I believe, in next 5 to 10 years, so that the quality education is made available to the students or to the children within the country. So with this, I wish you all a very happy World Accreditation Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maheshwari, and thank you for sharing your insights, sharing some great strategies and the benefits that the education organizations might get while they are implementing the standard. Thank you so much, and thanks for being here. Now, I'm so sorry we are already running late, but it's very important for us to introduce two organizations. And I don't think they would take much time. So just about 15 days back, we had launched an 11-day challenge. So EOMS standard has been developed on 11 principles. They are like focus on the learners and other beneficiaries. It's there on the screen: visionary leadership, engaging people, process approach, improvement, evidence-based decisions, relationship management, social responsibility, accessibility, equity that leads to inclusiveness, ethical conduct in education, and data security and protection. So every day we used to give one action point, and a lot of organizations were implementing those. There are 2 organizations who have been shortlisted to share their practices, the best practices. They are the ones who have already implemented the standards. So I would like to request them. One is the Oasis International School from Bangalore, and the trustee of the school, Miss Aisha Masood, is there with us. Can I request you, Miss Aisha, to please quickly, in just 2 to 3 minutes, share what have been your best practices and how you have benefited by implementing standardization. I think your inputs are very important for our audience.
Thank you very much for having me, Aarti, on this important day of yours. Being the founder of the school, I would focus on leadership perspectives of standardization. There are, I kind of narrow them down to 3 perspectives of, point number 1 is sustainability, which involves, creating policies, processes, then monitoring, evaluation, and regular audits, which is of course, conducted by COE, and they have really helped us, by adding value to our audits and our evaluation system. And then we do a PDCA. Then after we plan, then we check and we act again. So by doing that, we ensure sustainability in our organization. Then the next point is scalability. That is scalability, which involves growth, expansion. We do it with the RACI model. That is, where we give, we define roles and responsibilities with who's responsible, who's accountable, who supports, and who needs to be communicated and who needs to be informed. So by doing that, we align our roles and responsibilities. We avoid overlap and silos by connecting roles and responsibilities so that they are connected with each other and they are dependent on each other for the success of the organization. So we plan our, scalability in that way, and we are able to scale because we can optimize our resources by using this methodology. Then the third point, which is the most important, is legacy creation. As the founder of any organization, you would definitely want it to continue long after you. You don't start an organization for it to finish with you, right? So for that, we need to make sure that there's a legacy creation. And this will happen only by cascading our mission and vision through right through the last year 3 employee, and make sure that this is carried forward by the people. When there's attrition and when new people come in, we make sure that there's communication of our business value and our mission and vision. And then it is very important that to create a legacy, we make our organization more process driven than person driven. So whether the person is there or not, the processes are carried on in the way it has been laid down by the founders, and that will help that will help in realizing our dream, and to see that it is carried forward long after us, and in whatever way we have set it as much as possible. So these are the 3 things that this standardization has helped us do, and I hope this will be carried forward and create a legacy. Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you so much
for all your support.
I think your perspectives, because you are the one who has practically implemented it, so it makes a lot of difference. Thank you so much. And the next one and the last one we have is the Pre-Primary Teacher Training Institute from Hyderabad. This is called as IPTA, a very famous one, and they have done some great work in the field of teacher training. And they are the first ones in the country to be implementing the standard in their processes. We have the managing director with us, Ms. Sonal Ravi Andrews. Sonal, you're there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Ms. Sonal. So as Ms. Aisha quickly shared, I would request you also to share your experience.
Very true.
With us.
So we started our journey, and indeed it was really an eye-opening journey. This is a sector where we work, where normally nobody speaks about standard, nobody thinks about processes, things just go on. As eminent speakers spoke before us, that we are more of what are we giving our learners? Unfortunately, we don't think from the organization point of view, like when will organization grow? How are we going to manage our systems? Whole governance is going to be affected if we don't have this thought process. Though, to be really honest, to start the audit process, it looked tremendously difficult task. We started off with a mindset that every expert was once a beginner. And then things started rolling for us. IPTA has undergone stage 1 audit, and next one is soon going to happen. And we have learned so much, friends. What we've understood in the process is EOMS leads to more personalized learning and effective response to all learners. It widens our participation of interested parties and improve. The team has become much stronger now, on the same page, and the morale has gone higher. Our communication style, thought processes, our guidelines, policies have clarity in every action that we undertake. We are more transparent, and it makes all our stakeholders feel good about us, and so do we. COA is has really an efficient auditing team. During the audit, they were very firm. Their observation procedures and manners in which they changed our thought process, they opened a lot of unlocked doors for us. A lot of new ideas came up to us. We understood where we were going right and where we were missing the mark. Though the auditors were not consulting, didn't guide us, but they definitely told us how to do it, and they told us what is supposed to be done. This is the difference that I can see in COA and other education purpose sector body. This team knew the job and they knew how to get it done. We are glad that we are going to be the first teachers training who is going for it. I'm sure the kind of improvement that we have implemented, we are going to achieve and successfully maintain it as well. I personally think it's very important for all the teachers training institute across the globe to go for standardization, because we are creating teachers and they are going to set the benchmark. After all, we need to know why we do what we do and the way we do. Who dares to teach must never cease to learn. And getting audited or getting accreditation is a huge learning process. Thank you so much for having me here in this meeting. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Sonal. And with this, we come to the end of the program. I think what Ms. Sonal shared and what Ms. Aisha shared and what Dr. Kadinas has already mentioned, that the standard has got some very good guidance also. So those who are implementing the standard, please do refer to that document. You would understand how you can get the maximum benefit by implementing the standards. So thanks to all the speakers, Mr. Maheshwari, Dr. Kadanas, Mr. Tiwari, Dr. Abhay, Mr. Khamani, Dr. Soni, Dr. Kshitij, Ms. Ravneet, and of course our last two speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights with us, and I hope to see you all back with us soon. We don't have any questions on the Zoom platform, but in case there are any questions on YouTube, they will be directed to the speakers so that they can answer through an email also. I hope the speakers are okay with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In the interest of time. And thank you for bearing with us. And once again, apologies for overshooting the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to reconnect with everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. It was nice experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to interact with you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Aarti. Bye-bye.